Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Carrion. I played it on the Xbox Series X. It's available on the Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. So in Carrion, you play as this, I don't know if you're an alien creature or some kind of monstrosity of some sort, but that is what you play as, and it's not a strong story. You do get a little bit of backstory of how the creature was captured, but basically the story is more or less your goal, which is to escape the facility. I guess you're being experimented on, etc., etc. Your goal is to find the other portions of you that have been separated for experimentation and to escape. And that's really kind of what's there. So let's move on to the audio, which I gotta say, the music is utterly forgettable. I don't even remember music. Oh god, yeah, that's sad. As for sound effects, I think the sound effects are well done in this game. I think the sound effects for the creature, which is like this pissed off tentacle, multi-mouthed monstrosity, the sound effects are really cool for the tentacles, for the different abilities you gain as you go through the game. The terrified screams of the scientists and security staff of the facility are well done. I would say the ambient noises are very well done as well. They definitely make you feel like you are there. But I don't have a lot to say about the audio overall. So let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a side-scrolling Metroidvania kind of game, which, like I said, you play as this pissed-off tentacle monster with multiple mouths, and your basic goal is to get through this world and escape, which involves, slaughtering the humans that have captured you and exploring, finding other parts of your biomass to gain new abilities and powers and whatnot. But I gotta say, the exploration element really suffers in this game because there is no map for you to use. And while admittedly it's not the biggest of worlds and biggest of maps, a map would be nice because a lot of the tunnels start to look kind of similar. And I have seen other videos, not necessarily reviews, that mentioned that it wouldn't make sense for this creature to be able to use or read a map, and I've got to disagree because this creature is sentient enough and conscious enough to impersonate human beings, so why couldn't it use a map to explore? But it suffers because a lot of the areas look so similar, and eventually you get to a point where you're kind of almost running in circles sometimes trying to figure out where the fuck you're trying to go. Now that being said, it's really a very boring game, honestly. Like, at first it was really exciting and it was really cool getting all the different powers, and I will say some of the powers are pretty cool. My favorite one is definitely the one where you can take over enemies. But basically every area boils down to go find these certain areas, take over this certain area, it will help open the door to move on to the next area. And they're all that way. And they don't necessarily have bosses, they don't have things to really, quite frankly, get you all that excited. It really becomes very rinse and repeat, and after the first few zones, I really got bored. I also ran into a mechanical issue that sounds kind of control related, but it's really not, and it's the fact that once you reach a certain size, the creature becomes incredibly difficult to control, not because of the controls, but because you can get stuck in these hate loops where it randomly decides which end of the creature is going to be the lead end, but then it will bounce back and forth between either end of it, so you can get stuck trying to climb up this area, but you can't get up it because, oh, suddenly your back end is now the lead end and it's trying to go in a different direction. One of the best examples for me was I was trying to reach a switch, but I couldn't get there because it kept switching which end was in control of the creature, and it just got really frustrating. To the point where I finally captured a clip of it, and I have to complain about it because, like I said, it's just frustrating when you're trying to explore and you're trying to reach certain things, but all of a sudden the front end that you were using to guide yourself is now the back end, and your back end is now the front end, and it's dragging you somewhere else. I will say early on, it's really fun playing as this monster, gaining the new abilities, exploring at first, and how the new abilities then lend themselves to more difficult puzzles. At first it's all really exciting, but eventually it gets kind of boring because the puzzles aren't super rewarding. Like I said earlier, there's no boss fights. It just very much becomes rinse and repeat, and eventually I got to a point where I was just like, I just need to finish this game. Which, fortunately, it's not a super long game, so I'm glad for that. Let's get into the controls. Honestly, I found the controls to work very well. I was actually really happy with the controls. My biggest issue was a mechanical thing rather than the controls not functioning the way I wanted. When the mechanics weren't screwing me over, I was moving in the directions I wanted to, when I wanted to. I was able to grab when I wanted to, use my abilities when I wanted to, etc. So I don't have any real complaints with the controls, oddly enough. And then lastly, the graphics. I'm going to bitch about it like I generally bitch about it. I'm really tired of this overly pixelated look. I will say, however, I did feel like the different enemy designs were pretty cool. You could go into an area and really see what you were up against just based on that. As well as the creature design was really cool, really well animated. I thought the different mouths, all the thousands of tentacles your creature has, the powers, their visual appearance, I thought that was all very well done. That being said, I felt the world was honestly kind of boring. They really needed to do something more with it, because while you can clearly tell the different zones, they're all just tunnels. Okay, this is a leafy tunnel, this is a rocky tunnel, this is basically a metal tunnel, and that's what it boils down to, and that gets really boring to look at after a while, especially, like I said earlier, no map. So you're sitting there trying to explore and you're like, oh, I'm back in this grassy area, oh, I'm back in... It just gets old because you're just kind of blowing through these areas trying to find the next area because you don't necessarily know where you're going and you don't have the map to guide you. So you tend to just blow through a lot of the areas and not really necessarily pay attention to the design of them. That's a little disappointing. I think having the map would have been more beneficial because then you'd be like, okay, I need to go through the leafy zone, then this rocky zone, then this metal zone, etc. to really, it would help you appreciate the zones. Unfortunately, visually, because I don't like the pixelated thing, the only thing that really stood out to me was the creature design, and as I said, I thought it was cool, I thought it was well done, and really well animated. So to wrap this up, the two biggest positives I have about this game are the creature was cool, I enjoyed that for the most part, and that it's a short game. Because quite frankly, if this game was much longer doing what you were doing, I would have lost my goddamn mind because it got so boring and tedious, quite frankly. The combat in the game works well enough, but there's not anything to make it truly fantastical because, like I said, no boss fights, no map. There's just a lot of things that hold this game back from being more interesting than it could have been. So I personally am not gonna recommend it. I mean, yeah, it's a cheap game. Maybe if you pick it up for $5 and you just want to burn a little bit of time, but even then, I wouldn't really recommend this game. I didn't have that good of a time with it. I enjoyed it at first, but that died off quickly and it became a chore. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me what's a game that you were glad was considerably shorter than you originally hoped for? As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, and if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.